Welcome to Callcore Conversations. Today we have Kyle Wood, CEO of Onscript AI and a serial entrepreneur. Kyle, tell the people a little bit about you, what your business journey has been like, kind of what you do now.
Yeah, thanks. So first off, I've been developing Onscript for about 3 to 4 years into this now, depending on how you look at what the research and development was. So I'll take a step back. I was the CEO of Yodel Technologies for about 10 years, and we ran that business as a large BPO soundboard company. Worked with business to business relationships, did a lot of outreach for different companies, and inside of the development of that business, we found a lot of pain points inside of quality control. I think one of the largest issues for call centers is their attrition, their new hiring, keeping the new agents, getting them up to speed, productive, and those kinds of things. And so we struggled with that for a lot of years. Sold the business about 4 years ago, and then we took the knowledge base and a lot of the key technology components that we had developed and learned in that space, and started Onscript to basically overcome and solve for the problems that exist in the quality control world. And we wanted to, we looked at it from the standpoint of early days. It was like, okay, you could use some of these nice tools that we developed. There's like key detection, keyword detection. There's transcriptions. There's facilitating manual review processes to make it a little bit better. But we didn't want to take that approach. It was like, look, we're going to get into this. Let's really solve the problem 100%. And one of the biggest issues is it's difficult to have manual reviewers. They're all subjective in their reasoning. It's difficult for them to be good coaches. It's like a hard thing for all of these training pieces to come together. So we wanted to use AI with the industry exploding inside of AI. But this was, 3 years ago when we started to attempt this. It was like AI was still not quite what it is today. And so we've had a development journey over the course of these years, watching the industries just explode with all the AI technology and being able to take advantage of all that mind share and resources that are out there and develop this product that we have. And so today it stands that, we've been able to completely 100% automate all quality control, and you don't have to have a single manual reviewer in there. And the system is better than manual reviewers. We've gone head to head. We've had a lot of big BPOs, and it's nice to kind of talk to companies because we came from that world, because I'm like, look, I get it, go ahead and test us, have your manual reviewers cross-check what we do. And typically if you take like a human that does a quality control review and you re-look at their work, they're usually about 90% accurate. Like humans are going to have errors as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So in that process, we typically have started when they say, okay, let's go head to head. We do an initial scorecard. We start to do a review process with them. We usually land right about their same as their manual reviewers, like 88 to 90%. And then we take about 1 to 2 weeks. We tweak it, we fine tune it, and then we're like sitting at like 98% accuracy. So it's been fun. Like it's been a really fun project, building technology, helping companies solve problems. And it's got so many different use cases, which we can start going into all kinds of rabbit holes here. But as far as our background and where I come from, been in call center for over 20 years, been in this industry for a long time, so understand it very well. And this is a fun product.
Yeah, I think obviously our business has call center products, and QA has always been a very core piece of that business. And one of the problems that we consistently run into is you just can't grade enough calls without spending so much money that you need a million manual reviewers. And everything that we do is scale. We do 3 to 500,000 dials a day. So, you know, getting 20, 15% contact rate on those records and having a billion calls in between, it sometimes you just kind of end up in this scenario where you're trying to pick judgment points of like, what kind of calls based on this data do we want to look at? And I think you miss a lot on the other side by doing that. And one of the things that we want to avoid the most is the worst thing that could happen, which is a client catching a problem and not yourself.
Yep.
And so I think there's huge value in a product like that. In the AI world, I know you started it 3 years ago. It's almost moving faster than anybody can keep up with it. How are you guys managing dealing with how those changes are happening so quickly, and there's new features and new abilities, and the chat GPTs of the world are evolving 10x every time they roll out a new product? How does that affect you guys?
It just helps us. Every new innovation is just making our product better because we tap into those resources. We can utilize the resources. We have our own secret sauce of how we put all this together, and our product is a product of information and how you can be like, well, I can take a call and I can transcribe it with this, and I can take the transcript and give it to chat GPT and I can ask it questions, right? Like somebody can do that on a manual basis, but you can't do that, with 10,000 phone calls a day and figure out, you have to have the infrastructure and the product that takes all of the calls and digests it and then utilizes the actual right systems that are in the marketplace to do what you need to do to answer the questions correctly. Because you'll find if people have gone out there and tried this, they'll find that maybe OpenAI works pretty good for one thing, but it doesn't work very good for another thing. And so what we've developed is we've been able to go out there and utilizing our own programmers and our own development and engineer team to take on everything that's going out there and building up and taking it in-house and utilizing the best resources for the right solutions and then delivering that back to our clients. So it's been a really solid effort.
Yeah, I've talked with Adam from Ringbone, a couple of other larger tech companies, and they consistently say the same thing. Adam's funny. I always ask everybody the same question. I'm going to ask you that question now. So if you could rewind back to day one of starting the company, what would you change? What advice would you give yourself? And I hear a lot, especially in the tech side. It's like, I wouldn't have started a tech company. But it's such a difficult process. But what advice would you give yourself now if you could rewind and go tell yourself something?
Yeah, I think that it's maybe a little different than maybe I don't know if that Ringba is Adam's first rodeo when it comes to like this stuff. For us, I've been an entrepreneur for my whole life. I've started a lot of different businesses in different fields. Like I would tell everybody not to start a restaurant. That's a great advice for anybody. Like you get when you're in the food industry, one time is all it takes. Like, so I guess high level perspective, like I can look at it and be like, well, I'd rather be in a tech company than in the food industry. That's for damn. But and then even coming from call centers, like running a call center is really tough. Like I don't know if Adam's ever done that or any of the guys out there that have done that. But man, that's a hard job, and you're dealing with clients all the time, wanting to make sure performance is there. Anything in performance marketing is rough. You're always having to hit these levels and targets. For me, it's like tech companies. I would way rather do tech than running a call center or than running a restaurant or these other things. So we're pretty happy where I'm at right now. But it's the road to getting here, I have perspective. I can see backwards and say, I'm happy where I'm at. And the reason we made the decisions where we're at today is because of the things I've experienced to get to this point. And so I don't think we would do too, as far as if I could talk to myself maybe 20 years ago, I'd be definitely giving some advice on what to do and not to do. But as far as this company is concerned, we come with a team that is really, really well seasoned, and we all came together, and we didn't have to do this. Like we were all, financially well off, and we kind of came at this looking at it like, hey, this would be a really fun project, and let's build this up to a really solid company, solve problems for the industry that we came from, that we've given a lot of blood to over the years, and see what we can do to help it. And so our core focus, like when we started Onscript, it was to solve two problems inside of the industry. One is just the Q&A, manual reviews, right? And solve that, right? It was our first thing we solved. Then the second thing that we wanted to solve, and this was designed from the beginning, is I wanted to solve for coaching. So on one side in call center, you've got keeping the guys in line, not saying the things they shouldn't be saying, right? Then there's performance. Now you've got to help the agents get better and perform better. And it's tough when your team leaders and all of your guys are in there trying to get all of these things balanced. And so we wanted to give a solution that was just like completely automated. And so we just barely solved for that problem about 3 months ago when we launched our product that we call Vocalytics, which we can talk a little bit about that, but it's a completely tonality based system where the AI is listening to a call just like a human would and giving feedback on, how good was the pacing of the call, how good was their listening skills, how empathetic were they, how energetic were they, all of these like really important pieces. And we're taking all that data and we're molding it into a really, really high analytic, from a level of looking at agents and saying who performs the best and why, right? That's the biggest question. You probably have tried to answer that for every call center, right? Like, how do we replicate this guy that continues to outperform everybody by double and triple?
Yep.
And usually it's like, you just can't figure that out. Like, it's like, well, he's really good on the phones. He's got good responsiveness. He's got some but it's really tough to replicate that. So what do? You just keep hiring and you just keep going around and around and around with new hires, attrition and things like that. So we've come up with an actual science behind this.
Yeah.
And we're rolling this out. It's not fully done. It's going to take the Vocalytics product and put it into a science of refining agents to where they have coaching on a daily basis in their own portal, to where they can see you need to focus on your pacing. That's your number one. Try to pace the call a little bit slower. You're talking way too fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Do that for a week. Then next week, hey, doing great now on pacing. Really good. You'll notice your performance has gone up a little bit. Now we need you to start. You're not empathetic enough. You're railroading over the top of people. Do that. You know what I mean? These small incremental gains, where that's impossible to do that when you have 1,000 agents and you're trying to use this these manual reviewers. You just can't get that kind of feedback to the agents appropriately, because there's nobody that knows that stuff that isn't somebody that you really want on the phones. You know what I mean? You need the best on the phones, and the best is the only ones that can really give that advice and help people. So it's been really fun to to solve these problems.
I think you hit on a couple really hot topics, and obviously as someone who runs a call center, you consistently run into this problem, and you just said it, where the best person to teach someone is the best performer, but you can't always promote the best performer, and then you have no performers on the phone. So this is a loop of a situation. And for us, we've made our money removing variables. I think that the way to build something that's consistent and successful is to have the least amount of variables as possible, things that are outside of your control, things that are subjective to the person or the day or how someone's feeling. And so, we use hard scripting software to track where the agents are going, where we're the losing calls. We have a very static coaching process. Everything we do is very data driven. Nothing is based on how anybody's feeling, not even myself, let alone how an agent's feeling on the day. I have this perspective of if most of the time if an agent's underperforming, if you ask them why, they're going to say it's the leads, or
Yeah.
they're going to say it's the process is broken or something, anything, but I'm not doing what I need to be doing 100%. I might be doing 75%, 80%. And where we find that big variation is that every so often, 1% of the 1%, there's somebody who can come in and work every single minute of the day at the absolute best all the time. And that's where you start to see that big gap between the top performer and the low performer. And sometimes there's things you can do to get them to that. And then there's sometimes there's just different types of people. I think that removing the variable on the QA side is an extremely valuable thing. Historically, one of my problems, and we've looked at solutions like this for internally, one of my problems up to this point with the solution was exactly what you said, with the empathy and having a human hear what's happening. Is like, we can point blank some things. Did they ask this question correctly? Did they get the yes? Did they get the no? Those things were always done, but the empathy and the tone was always the biggest problem that wasn't really being addressed. And so the vocalytics piece of that, I think, is, for myself at least, and probably for the whole space, extremely valuable, because I can get the yes or no's on if they did the check boxes correctly. But 90% of the job is how they sound when the person answers the phone, how they're reacting to things that are subjective that someone is saying. You can have an IVR read the script and get your yes and no's. The reason the human is valuable is because of the empathy and the responses that change based on what the consumer is saying. And so having something that notices those things and can account for things that won't happen on every call and maybe only happen once ever, but the thing caught it and has noted that was the right or wrong thing, I think is super, super valuable. For business owners that may be starting a new business, and I've crossed this bridge, I think, in my own head a billion times. I can build a business. I think there's always a giant fear of it being your own, right? There's the risk of the payroll, and I take these personal things right now when I'm running this business of everybody under me is relying on me. But still, personally, I've never made the jump to go start my own business, and I think that's the case for a lot of people that end up in leadership roles. For a lifetime, what is some advice that you'd give somebody who maybe has all the skills to run a business and maybe is just afraid to take the next step or doesn't know what that road looks like?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think they have every right to be afraid
Mm-hmm.
of running their own business. And I think if any entrepreneur was asked that question, they would say the same thing. It's like, it's not easy to run a business. There's a lot of stress that comes that is beyond even just a leadership role inside of a business like you're describing. And so I think it comes down to a good understanding of what they're going to face. So everybody that's ever asked me that question, because a lot of people have come to me and said, "Hey, what do you think of this business idea? And what do you think of this?" And I'm always like, "Look, any business idea can work if you're willing to grind it out long enough."
Yeah.
That's the key. So do you have it in you to go into a position and grind it out for probably 2 to 3 years? And that's usually about how long it takes. I've started a ton of businesses. Every single time it's about 2 to 3 years. Now, there's easier ways to make that path happen. If you could get some VC money, or you could get some partnerships, you could get some stuff in there to help alleviate the pain of the financial aspects, then that will help a lot. But that's going to be like, that's a kind of a give and take. Like, you can have the support of the financial piece, and then it takes away the stress that really kind of helps build the business, because that's what, like, you push harder when your back's against the wall. You know what I mean? And so if you can have some funding there, that's nice. That's important. Still, got to work, push hard. But I think everybody needs to just know that, if you want to grind it out and you have that, and you feel like that's in you, like, I'm a hard worker, I can take the stress for 2 to 3 years, and you can make any idea work. It's because it's just going to be trial and error. Like, along the way, you're going to be like, this didn't work. I got to reroute. I got to redirect. Got to do that. That's the way, the nature of getting a business successful.
It's funny you say trial and error. I was talking to my team earlier, and one of them was like, "Well, you just seem to always have the answer." And I was like, "I'm going to be transparent with you right now. I don't always have the answer. I am, with some experience, picking a couple of options that might work best, and then I'm trial and erroring." the difference between the trial and error that works and the one that doesn't is you don't roll something out and then turn your back, right? You roll it out and you watch it. If it's not working, you go to the next option. You go to the next option. And I see a lot of people get lost in that trial and error in fear of making a mistake. And every single, including myself, like at this point, I'm running Callcore pretty much alone. And there's this thought process that like, I just know the answer. It's like, that's not the case. You have to make an educated decision. And I find that the people that struggle with that are the people that are afraid to make a mistake. And so they just lock up and don't make any choices. And making a mistake, and I'm sure you can attest to this, making a mistake is a guarantee at some point. You're gonna bat. You're lucky. I mean, in baseball, you're a MVP if you bat 400. I think that applies to business too, right? You're gonna make a ton of mistakes along the way, and unfortunately, it's just how you adapt to those mistakes and learn from them. I think that is the most beneficial. You've opened quite a few businesses, and some of those with a ton of employees. Some of them, like now, maybe is smaller than some of the previous ones. Company culture becomes a huge topic of conversation, I think, pretty regularly, especially when it's a new business, because you are having those financial woes, and it can be very easy to get stressed out about the fact that you're having financial issues and take that out kind of on the team and the culture. And so I know obviously now you're in a much different financial situation, so it's less stressful than it was maybe at the very beginning. But how do you balance the stress of the business needing to make a profit and also balancing the culture aspects so everybody's kind of working together to accomplish the goal?
Yeah, I think that I can see the overlap there in having the stress of the business financially kind of hurt the culture. It's just, you got to compartmentalize that. Like as a leader, you cannot show that fear, that stress that is on the other side. I mean, you've got to lead by way of positivity, reinforcing people's achievements. I mean, that's the culture that we've always had as in business. And I feel like we've had some pretty good, like I feel like people that have worked for us have stayed working for us. And that's typically the way you can kind of tell if you're running a good business, is people aren't quitting on you because they enjoy the culture, right? And so I feel like we haven't seen that a lot in our business. And I think that the reason for that is we run a culture that is I lean on more of a positive reinforcement than a negative reinforcement. Not to say you have to keep people accountable for what they need to be doing. Otherwise, you will have a failing business. But there's also, you can give people a pat on the back and tell them they did a good job. Like when they actually complete something well, tell them they did a good job. And I think that's like something that people lack sometimes from a leadership point, is they just don't take the simplest thing. And it takes 10 seconds to tell somebody good job. That's so meaningful for that employee coming from somebody that's up at the top. And I think that's a simple way to do it. But, to answer your question, you just can't let those things overlap. Like, you have to be able to compartmentalize the stress of the finances versus the culture of the business,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. In your space, there's a lot of technical challenges that come with building something new. And sometimes that can affect, and maybe I'm incorrect here, the initial sales process of finding new clients. You have a new product, you've tested it, you got to start rolling it out to actual clients. So two-part question. One, what's the best way for someone that is finding new clients with a brand new product to kind of obtain new clients and let them know transparently, like, this is a new product, we test what we can, but we got to really get it out in the field. And then second to that, the sales process for finding clients for something like this, what does that look like? I think for me, my LinkedIn I probably have 50,000 messages in my LinkedIn right now, and it's just inundated with sales messages, right? Between that and emails, there are some things that stand out to me personally that I take meetings for, just how someone interacted maybe differently. But it's really hard sometimes to do that sales pitch without connections. And so how do you cross that bridge with a new product?
Yeah, every product's a little different. That's for sure. When we were in the call center on the BPO side, it's, you can go and you can hire the guy that's already been there. Like that's a good piece, is the correct person that has the experience to be able to go into their warm network, right? And that's one way. With this particular product, and with our previous BPO product, getting into conferences, that's always been a very good one. I think trade shows are important to get in front of people, have face-to-face conversations. And then there's traditional marketing methods. You can just start calling businesses that meet the right profile. You can do paid search. And honestly, right now we're doing all of that, everything I just mentioned, all of the above. And it's hard to say like which one's the most successful, because they kind of overlap a little bit. You might reach out to somebody that, or maybe it's a paid search, and they come in and they're most of the paid search stuff you'll find are shoppers. They're window shopping a little bit, and they're trying to just compare what the best thing is out there. That's why they did the Google search. And so you don't have as much of as high of a close rate on that as some of the other channels, but you might find that all of a sudden that same person, you see them at a show, right? And now they've seen you 2 times. Now that's come back multiple. I think that this kind of a product, a technology product, it takes a little bit more than just one instance of a conversation. People have to get comfortable that you are legitimate in the business and that you can do what you say you can do. A little different than maybe like performance marketing, where performance marketing, it's like, hey, I can text message your data, or I can call this data, and I can make you money. Like,
Yeah.
okay, here, please show me. I would love you to make me more money, right? I'm going to do that, like, boom, no big deal. Whereas when they're paying for a service like what we do, it's a little different. It takes a little more time, so you have to be a little bit more patient in the onboarding process, in the cycle of getting the new client.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the biggest mistake that people make when they onboard a new client? I have my own list of things, and my biggest one at the very top is overpromise and underdeliver, which I see a lot from a lot of salespeople that kind of reach out about different things. What do you think is the biggest mistake somebody can make when trying to pitch a new client and onboarding them for the first time? The quickest way to lose them.
Quickest way to lose them. I think one thing that's important is confidence, like in your own product. Like if you're talking to me and I can tell you like this is a little bit robotic, a little bit routine. Like I don't think like passion in what you are actually doing is important, and your own ability to talk around all of the nuances and all of the like for me, I personally have always been in mostly every department of our businesses that we've built, because I want to have the knowledge and understanding of all of the pieces. So one, I can support those departments, right? But that can translate really, really nicely into sales. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking to somebody and you can't get on their level and talk with them around the problems that they're looking to solve, because you're just a sales guy, you're probably not going to make very good progress. So for sales guys, it's important, even though they might just be like, look, I've got a silver tongue, I can talk my way around things, it's no big deal. Well, you can, if you're a guy that's like in operations and you're talking about this kind of a product like ours, and you can't really get into the minutia of their of their business, you're gonna fail. So my advice would be like, know your product, like know it really well, be passionate about it, and be able to like be confident in what you present.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've had these problems in the past where we brought on a salesperson and they want to do the sales piece, but they don't understand the technical output. And what I find is that you kind of hinder yourself a little bit. Like, I am not a CTO. I am very much an operational guy. We have a genius of a CTO that works here. And it was very hard to find someone like him who not only knew what he was doing technically, but was also creative. And so him and I got along really well. And when we first started together, my first thing was, I want to know the real capabilities of everything. Because when I talk to people, one, I want to know what we can offer them. But also, generally, when we're talking, I see that there's other holes that they don't know that we can fill, and we can. And so I will start, everything that Callcore does has been built custom, which is not like, it's very hard to manage scalably, but it does offer the best product. One thing that when I took over this position that I did not want to do was build an out of the box solution, because it doesn't work for everybody. And I don't want to offer somebody something that can only help them 70% or 60%. So everything we do is custom. When I'm talking to people, I'm able to let them know that, one, yes, we can do this, or no, we can't do this, very transparently, not over promising and under delivering. But more importantly, I fully understand the whole process, because similarly to you, and at Callcore, I started at the most entry level position. I was able to go through every position, genuinely employed at all of those positions. And so it was a lot easier for me than it is for somebody that maybe new, even if they have all the experience, because our business is different, and that changes with every business. So I think that is super, super important. I couldn't agree with you more. So for the people that, may be interested in Onscript or wanting to talk about a demo, what's the best way to reach you guys? What's the best way to set up a meeting? What does that look like?
Yeah. Easiest thing to do is just go to our website. So it's onscript.ai and request a demo. So
Awesome.
you can go on there, you can learn a little bit more about the product itself. But I mean, I think we've pretty well covered, the basic understanding of what the product does.
Mm-hmm.
But when people jump on a demo, I can jump on for 10 minutes with somebody. I mean, I do demos at trade shows in 5 minutes and just kind of show, like, look, here it is, boom, boom, boom. Here's how it works. Here's the reporting aspects. Here's how you get the improvements and so forth. So it doesn't take a lot of your time. We can knock it out pretty quickly, but at the end, it's it's so valuable. I think like, to speak to the audience out there of all the call centers, the biggest thing, and this is a mistake, is it's kind of a sideline item a little bit. Like, we have a working model, we have manual reviewers. It's okay right now. We review like 3 to 5% of our phone calls, and and I can appreciate that. Like, running a business, like running the BPO we ran before, it's kind of like, I don't want to be bothered by investing time and changing something that pretty much kind of works as it is, right? I need to be focusing on growth. I need to be focusing on revenue. It's a mistake to not take a minute and look at the overall industry, the AI industry that's changing things so rapidly. It's just, when you see what it can do and the information that it provides, it's just, when we have clients that make the commitment, put in the time, move it over, they're like, oh man, I should have done this so long ago. Like, it was so worth it. Like, now we're able to, instead of reviewing 3% for the same price, we're reviewing 20%, so they're not putting it, most of them just take the budget they were spending, move it over to us, and they get 5 times more, 10, it depends on where your reviewers are at. Like, if they're sitting in the Philippines or India, maybe 4 or 5 times more. They're the US, it's like, okay, obviously you're getting a heck of a lot more out of your budget.
Yeah.
But it's the industry's changing. Everything's getting more efficient. And if you're not going to use the technology that is there, your competitors eventually will get there. Yeah. And they will be more effective. Their agents will become better performers, and you're going to be playing catch up. So
Mhm.
I would just recommend like jumping in. The question people always ask too is, I've been waiting around to get, make sure the technology is good enough. And that's understandable too. I've done that before. And I can tell you right now, it's good enough. Like it is there and it can solve all the problems. So,
Yeah, I think that there's a massive problem. So big psychology guy. Like I want to understand how consumers' brains work, agents' brains, managers. And there's this theory, and it makes so much sense. I hate using it because it connects agents to prisoners, which is not the connection I'm trying to make. But it's called the panopticon theory. And the idea is that at jails, there is a tower, and every 30 minutes or so, a guard comes and walks around. And then he goes in, the windows are tinted. They think that they're being watched all the time. And
right.
because they think they're being watched all the time, they generally do the right thing. Now, the guard is actually once every 30 minutes, walks around for 5 seconds, and he goes and does something completely different. There's nobody in the tower. And so a product like yours, not that agents are prisoners for the record, a product like yours, though, can give that idea that everything is being reviewed. And so you don't have the opportunity to take this call off or be rude to somebody because one, we're going to catch it and it's going to get flagged. And we've done a good job of doing that manually, but if transparently, we're missing a lot. And so a lot of it comes from us just being lucky in what we're catching, but also doing live listening and things to make it create that idea. But with your product, you're genuinely accomplishing that. And if there's is there some sort of flagging system of like this agent has done something horribly wrong? Can we put this in front of somebody right now?
Yeah. I mean, message them on Slack or Skype,
Yeah.
like, boom, it's done. You got it. You're getting that agent off the phone if they did something, extremely wrong. And so, like I said, it's just the effectiveness of implementing this kind of a product. It doesn't cost any more money,
Yeah.
than you're spending. All you're doing is taking your budget and you're moving it from manual reviewers to this AI product, and then you're way more effective, and you catch problems more quickly. Your agents have better coaching abilities from all of the input that we're giving. I mean, you're just putting more money to the bottom line by doing this. You don't
Yeah.
spend more, you just make more. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kyle, for coming. Everybody knows my motto. I am one to automate everything. If you can't find an automation in the space, you need to be looking harder. And Kyle and Onscript fill a very big hole for us. So thank you for coming, Kyle. We appreciate it.
Chris,
Great day, everybody.